Hello and welcome to Catechist TV, and this is a brand all new edition of This Is Metal with Joe Lawson. We got the man with his name in the title of the show. He's in the silhouette there. How are you doing tonight, Joe?
Doing good, doing good. This is our first Zoom.
Session, so to
This is
speak.
metal, so it's a new experience, that's for sure.
Back, Joe. Before we get into tonight's episode, this is something I got last Friday, and we're going to be doing a future episode on this. This is the new Metal Church album. Have you had a chance to hear any of the songs off of this or check out the video? All right, that is metal, man. We got the same stuff.
I picked it up as soon as I seen it was available. I actually pre-ordered it.
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story about that and getting music. Like a lot of people, I get my music through Amazon and online, and I ordered the new Tesla Live album, thinking because it came out the same day as that. They're telling me you'll get your CD July 28th. Okay, thank you. I guess that's a popular album, huh?
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah. So tonight, Joe, we've never done an episode on the metal queen Lita Ford. I don't know how big of a Lita Ford fan you are, but specifically, we're going to talk about her debut solo album, which is called Out for Blood. That was released May 1st, 1983. You know, a Lita Ford fan or anything like that?
Yeah, you know what? I am a fan of her, and I like her spunk, her spirit. She's got some attitude and fight, and I think that was one of the things that with this debut solo record that she did in 1983, that's one of the things that I noticed the most about it is I think that's what kind of gave her a platform for the rest of her career, really. I
Sure.
mean, because it really fit in with the times. 1983, you're talking, 80s metal was just starting to really, come into what it was going to be, So um, I think she had a huge uphill battle being a chick and
Yeah.
trying to put a solo record out in 1983 like that. That was pretty a pretty tall order for any woman to try and accomplish
Yeah.
that back then. And she did a good job. She had some great chops, some good songwriting. I mean, was it like over the top amazing? No,
No.
it wasn't. In my honest opinion, no.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell
But
you
was
this.
it good enough
Yeah.
to win fans over and to showcase that she does have some talent? She does have some songwriting. She is attractive. She's got attitude. She's got fire. She's got spirit. Absolutely. And I think that established everything else that she did for the rest of her career happened because of that record.
Yeah, and in 1983, as you say, the start of metal, of a real metal LA explosion scene. That's when Motley Crue's "Shout at the Devil" came out. Quiet Rights, first heavy metal #1 album, Metal Health came out. All these
Yeah,
albums
so
came out
she had some heavy hitting competition for sure.
for years. And let's not forget, this is her debut solo album. And what did Lita Ford? Where did she come from? Of course, the all-female band, the Runaways, which I dare say they were much more heavier. They were really all full blown on metal, a little bit of hard rock in there. But so if you listen to the debut Lita Ford album, she was simply the guitar player in the Runaways. So that was the first difference right off the bat, is that she had to prove herself as a vocalist, that she had the vocal ability, because if you could put out a Lita Ford solo album, if you wanted to sell you, better be able to sing or at least maybe just say, okay, well, I'm just going to put out a guitar album. But I think that's what worked for her because they found out she did have the vocal ability.
Yeah, absolutely. She has an unmistakable voice. I mean, not so much that and I don't mean this as an insult, but I mean there's certain singers, in my opinion, like Halford, like Dio, a lot of different people out there that I mean they really, really have a unique voice. I, she does have a unique voice, but it's just enough unique that once you get to know her voice a little and you hear it, it sticks in your mind. You remember it, and then when you hear it again, you're like, "Oh yeah, that's Lita Ford." So she has enough of that also helped her build a career as a singer, as a vocalist, in my
For
opinion.
sure. And this album too, being her debut album, they really got to prove, okay, that Lita can do something outside of her Runaways. And like I said, I urge anybody go on YouTube and check out, some of the stuff that the Runaways put out. Because again, and the Runaways, Lita was strictly the guitar player. And what's interesting is both Lita and Joan Jett's a singer, but they were kind of the breakout stars, oddly enough, of the Runaways. And they both got much bigger once they left the Runaways.
Yeah, yeah. Strangely enough, sometimes that happens, and I mean, it's not a dig to the
No, no,
Runaways. I
no.
mean, they were cool for what they did for sure, and that helped give her a launching pad, really. So it's not a bad thing, you
It's
know.
not a
I
bad thing.
mean,
No, I'm just saying.
there's there's been a lot of cases of that where people branched out and did solo careers, and their solo careers were actually more powerful and more popular than the
Yeah.
bands that they came from.
I mean, a great example of that, not metal, but even you look at Lionel Richie, originally from the Commodores, and he launched a successful solo career, and his solo career is more successful than anything they did after Lionel Richie left.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a ton of examples of that. I mean, you look at Dio, look at Ozzy. I mean,
Yeah,
all those guys came from bands previously before they put out any solo records.
yeah. And again, with Lita Ford, on the very first album, she's trying to find her sound, and I was reading up on Out for Blood, the album, and people have described it as kind of pop metal. You listen to some of the songs. I think all 10 songs sound like they belong on the same album, Joe. But the thing is, in listening to the album, there's some that definitely sound like they got that hard rock metal sound, and then some are a lot more kind of towards hard rock, maybe more of a pop, commercial, radio friendly feel. And again, 1983, got to remember, coming out as a new solo artist, maybe that's the kind of tunes they wanted to write. They're like, okay, we got to not only prove that Lita has talent outside of Runaways, but that she can get some of these songs played on the radio.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, you hit on something important there. During that time, and especially being her first solo record, I gotta imagine to say that there were people that were calling the shots kind of
Right.
behind the scenes. And some of those people were probably really aiming for a radio hit with some of that material. And that's exactly what they were trying to do to help establish her career.
I mean, and again, they branded her the metal queen, which for a very long time she was. I mean, you go back to the 80s, probably the two main kind of rock chicks were Lita Ford and Joan Jett, both, of course, from the Runaways, but they were both having very successful careers. And when we decided to do an episode on Lita Ford, I thought, I read something about this album was turning 40, and I thought, probably the most metal album she's done. Again, this is my initial thoughts going into doing tonight's episode, because I had seen the video for the title track. I've heard that a lot, but I hadn't really heard too much of the rest of the album, just because it wasn't outside of a title track. I haven't heard to be honest, really any of the other songs, and so I thought this would be kind of a fun way to hear the rest of the album, educate myself, and again, probably the most metal thing on the album is the title track.
Yeah, yeah. They're like you said, all the songs sound like they belong on the same album. And for the time frame that the album came out, I think that it fit in with the times really
Yeah,
well with
yeah.
what she was doing. And it definitely showcased songwriting talent and vocal talent and some spirit, some fight, some attitude. And it was just enough, in my opinion, that it gave her a foundation to build off of, and she did that. She's put out a lot of albums since then, and a quick funny story. When I was 16 years old, I met Lita Ford at a music store that she was doing autograph signing. The girl I was dating at the time was crazy about Lita Ford, wanted to meet Lita Ford. So we went and we met her, talked to her, got autographs. And the editor of the newspaper was there and took pictures of us. And uh, me and my girlfriend and Lita Ford was actually put in the newspaper, the picture.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow, wow! How amazing was that? Um, and then of course, let's talk about some of the songwriters that they use on this album. There was this guy called he's a singer songwriter from the United States. His name was Chip Taylor. And some of the songs he's known for writing in the past include Angel of the Morning and Wild Thing. Again, not even something anywhere near to being heavy metal, but that's the kind of songwriters Lita Ford was working with on this debut album.
Well, that's why the songs sound professional.
Yeah,
That's why there's harmonies, there's melodies, there's a hook, there's structure to it because somebody professional was involved. And that's not a dig at her saying that
yeah,
she couldn't do that.
yeah, yeah.
It's just the fact that she was working with people like that that really helped give her a solid foundation for her first solo record. And
And,
again, that's
and you're
probably the
so right
people, the record
because
label, the management, people that were behind the scenes kind of helping put this together for her.
and at the time she was signed to Polygram Records and like in trying to get a recording deal, that's the thing. When you go and you say, hey, she's writing some of the songs to the guy who wrote the Wild Thing. I mean, that gives you some credibility right there.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, having some professional talent like that goes a long ways. I mean, to speak to the success of what you're doing, you got to have talented players. You got to have talented writers. You got to have the right players in the right
Yeah.
places and positions for sure.
And then, and what's cool in doing kind of a breakdown of this album and kind of really looking at it, oftentimes you'll buy like a CD and it doesn't always list who played on the album or it might tell you the songs or who wrote it, but they don't always have like a complete thing of credits. And I went on the internet on Wikipedia and I found out the bass player was this guy, Neil Merriweather, and he was also a singer, songwriter, producer. He produced much of the album. He co-wrote most of his stuff with her. And he wanted to try to get involved with managing her, but he never went beyond producing the album. And he tried to get some heavyweights like Shep Gordon, who's really famous for managing Alice Cooper all these years, still is working with Alice all these years later. Alan Kovac, who manages the Eagles and Van Halen and Motley Crue. They tried to. This guy Neil Merriweather was trying to get these people to manage Lita Ford, but her record company and these people that I guess were working behind the scenes with her weren't interested. I mean, can you believe that?
Well, yeah, those are definitely some heavy hitter names, but you got to remember this was Lita's first solo record
Yeah,
too. So if you're speaking strictly from that time frame,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, the record label's not going to dump that kind of money
Until
into
you prove
getting
yourself. Yeah,
heavy hitter management like that for a new artist. That's way too big of a risk.
yeah, and it's kind of interesting to think about how people reacted to this album because um, you look like even a couple of years ahead. In 1988, she has a big breakout with the Lita album. That's the album she does the duet with Ozzy. If I Close My Eyes Forever, Kiss Me Deadly was a big hit on MTV. They did a video for those songs, and yet that's a lot more kind of commercial hard rock than what this was. I don't know why people didn't right out of the gate respond to this more favorably, but it's kind of interesting that I think in listening to it, it kind of holds up all these years later. It's kind of interesting. It's it didn't do what they had wanted it to do.
Yeah, it is a good record. Like I said, it fit in with the times. It showcased just enough talent, in my opinion, to give her a solid base to work off of. And then, like you mentioned, in '88 when "Close My Eyes Forever" and "Kiss Me Deadly" and stuff like that, that really was her coming to her peak as
Mhm.
a independent singer, songwriter, artist. I think that kind of stuff really put her on the map.
Oh yeah, yeah. And they even during the '80s, like a lot of the artists, like for the lead album, they really puffed her hair up and they really got her all dolled up and glammed up. Um, and it's
Yeah,
just kind
she's
of
pretty good looking, definitely.
yeah. I mean, for years she was the queen of metal. Now there's so many other female artists. Everybody from Doro Pesh to the Butcher Babies. I mean, there's a ton of female artists, but she's the one that started it.
Yeah, yeah, she was one of the pioneers. She was at the beginning of it with Doro for sure.
Yeah, yeah. They were the two like really heavy hitters as far as the metal scene. There's another song on this album, Just a feeling. That has more of a pop rock, radio friendly song, and I don't know why they wouldn't have maybe done a video or tried to promote that song more heavily on the radio again, because it's her first album. Maybe they think, okay, well, she hasn't really proven herself yet, and I don't know how much touring she had done at that point.
Yeah, yeah, she was new to being an independent artist, so I mean, she probably didn't have a lot of leeway or even say so, to be honest, especially back then when labels were calling the shots and dumping money into it and all these kind of things. They they weren't writing their own checks,
Yeah,
so to speak, back
yeah,
then. Even bands like Motley Crue back then weren't really didn't really have as much say so or leeway into doing what they wanted to
sure,
do,
sure,
probably,
yeah,
because they were still proving themselves.
yeah. I mean, interesting. There's this thing going around the internet the last couple of days, which I don't really know why they would put this out there. All this controversy of Motley Crue using backing tracks and stuff. Now, Nikki Sixx has gone on having Bob Rock, the producer, go on record saying what a great bass player Nikki is now, and that he's taking bass lessons. That's great and everything, but now they're trying to say that Nikki doesn't even know if it was his bass playing on the first four Motley Crue albums. I mean, I get that they do that stuff, but this is Nikki Sixx's band. I don't know. Why are you letting this out of the bag all these years later? I don't know if that was really me. I don't know why you would, you know?
Well, speaking from Nikki Sixx's point of view, those first four albums, he was drunk and high most of the time. So that's probably a good part of it. He
Yeah.
really probably doesn't know.
Yeah, that's true. Um, and then, in looking at this Lita Ford album from 40 years ago, I think the only song that's really in the set list from this album is the title track. And you can go online. There's a cool video for it. And it does kind of look kind of metal. She looks kind of hard, and that's the image she was going for. And I do think by the second album, I don't know if you've ever heard the second Lita Ford album, Dancing on the Edge. I think that's the one with Randy Castillo playing the drums on the album. And I think they found a much better balance. It was much kind of a little more towards metal and hard rock.
Yeah, yeah. Randy was a great drummer. He ended up going on to play with Ozzy and Motley Crue. I think he played with for a short time, even too.
Yeah, before he died, yeah. Um, and Lita's continued to put out solo. She last one's been out, I think, came out like her last studio album 10 years ago. She's supposedly working on a new one, so I think there may be something coming this year, but she's still constantly touring. And, I think she's in her mid to late 60s. And I tell you, she still looks just as good as she did in the 80s.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, yeah. She's a beautiful girl, and that's awesome that she's still touring. I mean, you got to respect somebody that's put in that much time, that much of her life to
Yeah.
doing this, and she's still out there. As hard as things are, and as difficult as it is for even an established big name to go out there and still do this, and it's a huge risk, and
Yeah.
uh, things are way, way different than they used to be. So she's not making nowhere near the money
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
she probably used to make doing this. So, that's probably speaks volumes to how much she probably really does love this,
Yeah, and she's one of those artists that continues to go out all the time and play live, like you said, because she's got the fan base, she's got the catalog of music, she can do it. Um, she doesn't necessarily have to put out new music if she doesn't want to, but I know she's been working on a new album, and she's got like a top-notch musicians in her band. The drummer Bobby Rock, he used to be in the band Nelson. He played with Vinnie Vincent. He's a real powerhouse of the guy, but so great talent in her band. And I remember, in the late '80s, you remember Rip Magazine?
Yes, oh, of course.
Yeah, they
Rip and Metal Edge
I
and Hit
remember
Parader.
Metal Edge was kind of my Bible, but Rip Magazine, I bring that up in regards to Lita Ford because they featured her quite heavily, but also as did any of the metal magazines. But I also remember her mother. They used to have a column called like an advice column called Mama Ford, where readers would kind of send in letters, and Lita Ford's mother would kind of add like a Dear Abby kind of column where she'd advise all the metalheads on
I
advice.
think I remember that. That's a blast from the past,
Yeah,
man.
it really is. And I miss those days of those magazines and stuff like that. That was really, obviously pre-internet, but it's funny that probably the closest thing that you still see Kerrang from time to time. Classic rock. I mean, $20, an issue. I have to really want maybe to read what's in there, but I will say for $20, they give you a nice magazine. It's not something that's easily destroyed, but I don't know. I don't want to pay $20 for a magazine every month,
Yeah, that's a bit much, but I mean, it was cool to get those magazines. I looked forward to it, and loved reading the articles and seeing the pictures and the posters and finding stuff out. I mean, it's what we did. It's what we looked up to. That and going to the record store, finding out when your favorite band's putting a new album out and when they're coming around on tour. I mean, it was what we did.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say this, Joe. Like, I urge people to go. You can go on YouTube and check it out for free. I mean, you can even go and buy the CD if you want. Out for Blood that we've been talking about. I've seen it on Amazon. I think for $6.99 or something like that. It doesn't cost you very much. But the point being, and listening to the entire album, because when we do these shows, I want to know what I'm talking about. So I make an effort to listen at least to half the songs on the album, so I have something to really give an opinion on. But to me,
Yeah, me as well, of course. And I had to do that honestly with this because I mean I knew the record existed and I
yeah,
knew what you were talking about, but I wasn't really familiar with it until recently, and I sat and listened to it so I could
and
give some kind of input or some kind of opinion to it. I had to sit down and listen to it, you
and
know?
that's what I was getting ready to say because I want to be honest with the people here. I had heard the title track and I thought maybe I would have heard some other tracks, but to be honest, up until a few days ago when I sat down and listened to it, and I went on YouTube to do this, I listened to every track. It was like listening to a brand new album that just came out for the very first time. I mean, that was really what it was like listening to a new album because I'd only heard the one track, and I was impressed with what I heard. And it's a shame 40 years later that more people don't know about that album, but that's part of the reason we do shows like this.
Yeah, exactly. To bring to light some of this stuff. And it would be really interesting if we could get Lita on a show and ask
Yeah,
her some questions about that. I'm sure she's got a ton of
yeah,
memories and things that she could tell people about or share with fans. Her experience doing this album and things that she learned and things that happened and how the tour went and I really enjoy those times when I meet different artists and stuff
yeah.
and they share different stories like that and you know John Corabi's a perfect example of that.
Back in the
Sitting
Dead Daisies, did you
getting
hear
and
that?
getting to chew the fat with that dude and finding out some of the things that he shared is really awesome and really cool that he's that down to earth and that honest. And
Yeah,
it's it's really cool when you meet somebody and they're that human. You know what I mean? They're that cool and they're sharing their experiences and the good and the bad.
yeah, yeah.
I enjoy hearing some of those stories.
Yeah, and it's funny, like in doing these interviews, like I do with the many musicians. Oftentimes, I've had the experience of sitting down and talking to my hero, but at the same time, you can't come across as a fanboy. You gotta keep it somewhat professional, and that's not always easy to do. I mean, like I've interviewed Carmine Appice like two or three times. Always super nice guy. Yeah,
Yeah, you know what? Especially when you meet someone that you really look up to, and you really thought the world of them, and they're cool.
yeah,
It's like, oh wow, how awesome. It's a totally different experience though when you meet somebody that you thought was cool or that you looked up to, and they're an asshole.
yeah. And some of these guys, even never having really met them, but maybe talking to them over the phone or something for a half an hour, you kind of feel like you know them in a way. I'll give you a perfect example. First time I ever interviewed Jack Russell from Great White. The band they had the two different Great Whites in that at that point, and he couldn't have been nicer to me. And he's like, man, great talking. I appreciate you taking time to do an interview with me. He's thanking me. And then he's like, anytime you want to talk to me, man, you got my number. You feel free to reach out to me. On the other hand, I wanted to interview somebody from the other band. I reach out to them, and the response I get from them not totally unfriendly, not totally unexpected, but they tell me, well, how many viewers, how many views does your site get in all this? And well, because we only do interviews with big with sites that get big numbers. Okay, well, okay, thanks, but no thanks. So I'll just call Jack Russell. He's much he's much more appreciative. And sometimes as silly as that sounds, that makes a difference.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And who knows, what the future holds.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe we can put this together and build those numbers. It's we're not the only ones that like the
yeah,
music that we do, that appreciate
yeah,
the music, the stories, and the interesting things that we find and discover. We're not the only ones, that's
yeah.
for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, and and doing these interviews like I do, a lot of time it's just about networking. Like I get a lot of the stuff I get to interview through through a couple of publicists, and they manage a lot of bands and do PR for them, and you got to show appreciation of those people because without them, we couldn't do what we do.
Absolutely, absolutely. It all works together hand in hand, and it makes a big difference when you like you said, when you meet people who are appreciative, respectful, and got something valuable, something good to share with you. I mean, that makes all the difference in the world. At least to me, it does.
Yeah, yeah.
As a
And Joe,
fan and doing interviews or anything like that, it's just I think everyone wants to be treated with the same kind of respect, and
yeah,
it's nice that when you are treated that way, especially by these people, you know, that have a successful career or
yeah, yeah.
famous musician or actor or whatever it may be,
Yeah. Yeah, and oftentimes I heard many of those people tell stories where they met somebody that they looked up to, and they were kind of let down by that person. So that's why oftentimes these people are maybe friendly because they've had experiences of meeting one of their heroes that wasn't so great.
Exactly, exactly. Yep,
And you mentioned
it
John
happens,
Corabi.
for sure.
You mentioned John Corabi, Joe. Did you hear the big news? He's back with the Dead Daisies.
Yes, I heard that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing what he does with them.
So I think we're gonna have to eventually do around August 8th. I think they haven't celebrate the last decade of music. They're gonna put out a greatest hits album, but don't forget they have like three different singers, John Corabi, Glenn Hughes, and then the guy that came before, John Stevens. So I think eventually down the line we're gonna have to kind of do a Dead Daisies episode. That's something I look forward to, and I think in the really immediate future, maybe after this episode, we've been talking about episode on this, the new metal church. Talk about this like in detail.
Yeah, yeah, that would be great. I love it. I think it's a fucking phenomenal record. I won't go into detail about
Yeah,
it, especially if we're going to do a show. I want to spend a little more time
yeah, yeah,
listening to it as
yeah.
well. I just got it, but highly recommend it. Go on YouTube, listen to it. Congregation of Annihilation. They got a new vocalist, and it's just absolutely killer. It's a great,
Yeah,
great
yeah.
record.
And so, Joe, before we wrap up tonight's show, how was this Zoom experience for you? Is this something you'd like to do in the future? You think moving forward?
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty painless once you get the initial hang of it, So
In
I'm good
fact,
with it,
Joe.
and we can do this. Yeah.
In fact, Joe, I've done several of these since January. When I got my new laptop computer, I kind of educate myself on this. It takes about 35 minutes to do each episode. I send it to the guy, and within days, it's up. So just to let people know before we wrap up tonight's episode, we're going to start doing it this way from now on. And me and Joe have been talking about another fun aspect of this is we're going to start reaching out to many of our friends in the metal community, and we're going to start having some guests. So that's something fun about moving ahead with this.
Absolutely, absolutely. Sounds fun.
Well,
Looking
Joe
forward,
Lawson,
looking forward to the next one.
you take care, my friend, and I'll be in touch. This will probably be going up within the next week, and of course, I will let you know once it goes up.
Okay, sounds good, my friend. Take
Take care,
care.
buddy.
Bye bye.